Take that to my wife. She's the one calling the shots here." Those were the words that came out of my son Caleb's mouth when the delivery guy rang my doorbell that Tuesday morning. He wasn't asking me. He wasn't consulting me. He was ignoring me completely, as if I didn't exist, as if I wasn't the one who had paid every single penny for that new refrigerator the two men were hauling in, wrapped in protective plastic. I was standing right there, less than 10 feet away, with my apron still on and my hands damp from washing the breakfast dishes. But to Caleb, it was like I was invisible. It was as if it didn't matter that this house was mine, that the money was mine, that every single thing they touched, used, and moved belonged to me. The younger delivery guy looked at me, confused, as if waiting for me to say something. But before I could open my mouth, Vanessa appeared from the living room, walking in those high heels that clicked loudly against the tiled floor I had installed 10 years ago. My daughter-in-law, 29 years old, long, dark hair. Always dressed like she was going to a party even if she was just staying home. She had her arms crossed and that small smile on her lips, that smile I knew all too well. The smile of someone getting exactly what they want. "Over there, to the master bedroom," Caleb repeated, pointing toward the room that had been my marital bedroom for 30 years. Now it was theirs. They slept there. They had taken my space, my privacy, my sanctuary. I looked around and felt my chest tighten. My living room didn't look like mine anymore. The furniture was in different places. The sofa I bought at the Christmas sales 5 years ago was against the opposite wall. The coffee table that belonged to my mother was shoved into a corner by the window, covered with home decor magazines that weren't mine. There were new throw pillows with bright patterns I never would have chosen. And on the wall, where my wedding portrait used to hang, there was now a huge mirror with a gold frame. Vanessa had been changing everything. For weeks, she moved things without asking me. She commented out loud that the colors of my walls were outdated, that the beige was depressing, that it needed livelier, more modern tones. She said my house needed life, as if 37 years of my life here meant nothing. And Caleb never contradicted her. He never defended me. He just nodded, as if every word that came out of Vanessa's mouth was law. I stayed quiet. I swallowed my words. I bit my tongue until it hurt. I told myself it was temporary, that soon they would find their own place, that things would get better. But now, watching my son order that my refrigerator, bought with my money, with 8 months of sacrifices and doing without, be delivered to his wife as if she were the owner of this house, something inside me broke. It wasn't a loud break. It was silent, deep, definitive. I felt my lips curve into a smile. It wasn't a happy smile. It was calm, dangerously calm. The smile of a woman who has endured too much and has finally found her limit. "Gentlemen," I said in a soft but firm voice. The delivery men stopped. Caleb turned his head, surprised. Vanessa raised an eyebrow, annoyed by the interruption. "That refrigerator you are carrying was bought by me, with my money, for my kitchen." My voice didn't tremble. My hands didn't shake. For the first time in 2 years, since Caleb and Vanessa had arrived to stay for a few days that turned into weeks and then into months and then into an endless nightmare, I felt like I was recovering something I had lost. My voice, my space, my dignity. Caleb opened his mouth to protest, but I raised a hand. A simple, firm gesture that stopped him dead in his tracks. There was something in my look that he hadn't seen in a long time. Something that reminded him of who I was before I became this silent, invisible, and resigned version of myself. Vanessa frowned. Her heels tapped impatiently against the floor. "Eleanor, don't be ridiculous," she said with that sharp tone she used when she didn't get what she wanted. "Caleb and I already decided the fridge would go better in our room. We have more space there. Our room. More space. As if this house were hers. As if every corner, every decision, every penny spent belonged to them by right." I looked at my son. I waited for him to say something, to defend me, to remember, even for a second, that I was his mother, that this was my house, that I had paid for that refrigerator. Not him, not her, me. But Caleb just looked down at the floor, uncomfortable, like a child caught doing something wrong but without the courage to admit it. And in that moment, standing in the middle of my own living room that no longer looked like mine, With my son avoiding my eyes and my daughter-in-law looking at me with disdain, I knew something I had been denying for too long. I had lost control of my own life. But that was about to change. I approached the delivery men with slow but steady steps. At 62 years old, my knees hurt a little on cold mornings. But in that moment, I felt no pain, only determination. "The refrigerator goes in the kitchen," I said, pointing to where the old one had always been. "That is where it belongs. That is where I want it." The two men looked at each other, confused. One looked at Caleb, the other looked at me. Caleb took a step forward. "Mom, we already told you that." "You didn't tell me anything," I interrupted him. My voice remained calm, but there was steel in it. "Nobody asked me. Nobody consulted me. You decided for me about something I bought in my house, as if I had no voice or vote." Vanessa let out a dry, humorless laugh. "Oh, Eleanor, always so dramatic. It's just a refrigerator. You don't have to make a scene." "It is my refrigerator," I repeated, looking her directly in the eye. "Bought with my money, in my house. And it goes where I say." The silence that followed was heavy, tense, charged with something that had been accumulating for months. Caleb looked at me as if he didn't recognize me. Vanessa had her lips pressed into a thin line. And I, Eleanor Roberts, widow, mother, owner of this house and every penny in it, stood before them with my back straight and my gaze steady. The delivery men were waiting for a final decision, and I was about to give them one that would change everything. My name is Eleanor Roberts. I am 62 years old. I have been a widow for 11 years, and this house, every brick, every window, every inch of floor that my bare feet walk on in the mornings, is mine. I bought it together with my husband 37 years ago. His name was Robert Roberts. He was an electrician, a good, hard-working man, the kind who got up before dawn and came back when it was already dark, with calloused hands and clothes stained with grease, but always with a smile for me and for Caleb. He died of a massive heart attack while fixing the wiring in a building downtown. He was 51 years old. Caleb was 24. I was 51. And suddenly, I was left alone. Well, not completely alone. I had my son. But Caleb was already living on his own back then. He had his apartment, his job at an insurance company, his life. He came to the funeral. He was with me during the first few days. He helped me with the paperwork, with the bank, with all those things one has to do when someone dies, and the world keeps turning even though you feel it should stop. Then he left. And I stayed here, in this house too big for one person, full of memories and silence. But I didn't give up. I never did. It wasn't my style. I kept working. I had been a secretary at an elementary school for 20 years. The salary wasn't much, but it was stable. It was enough to pay the bills, to eat, to keep the house in good condition. I learned to fix things myself. I changed sink faucets. I painted walls. I replaced light bulbs. I pruned the garden that Robert always tended with such love. I made myself strong because I had no other choice. And never did I ask Caleb for help. Not because I didn't want it. I loved him. He is my son. But I didn't want to be a burden. I didn't want him to feel he had to take care of me, to sacrifice his life for mine. I had already raised my boy. I had already done my job as a mother. Now it was his turn to live his own life. Caleb came to visit me once a month, sometimes every 2 months. He always had excuses, a lot of work, a lot of traffic, too tired. I understood, or at least that's what I told myself. Children grow up. They drift away. It's natural. It's what is supposed to happen. But I never stopped being his mother. I never stopped worrying about him. When he called to tell me he had lost a job, I offered him money. When he told me he was sick, I took homemade food to his apartment. When he met Vanessa 3 years ago, I welcomed her into my house with open arms. I prepared a special dinner. I gave her a necklace that had belonged to my mother. I wanted her to feel part of the family. I wanted her to know that I accepted her, that I loved her like a daughter. How naive I was. 2 years ago, Caleb called me on a Thursday night. His voice sounded tense, worried. He told me he had lost his job at the insurance company. Staff cuts, tough economy. The usual explanations. He told me he was looking for something new, But in the meantime, he was struggling to pay the rent on his apartment. And then came the question that changed everything. Mom, could Vanessa and I stay with you? Just for a few weeks. Until I find something new. A few weeks. That was what he said. A few weeks. I didn't think twice. He was my son. He was in trouble. I had space. I had 2 empty bedrooms, besides mine. How was I going to say no? Of course, sweetheart. Come whenever you want. This will always be your home. They arrived on a Saturday morning with 4 large suitcases and boxes full of stuff. Vanessa walked in with a smile, gave me a quick hug, and immediately started inspecting the house as if she were a real estate agent evaluating a property. She commented that the bathroom needed renovation, that the kitchen was very small, that the curtains were out of style. I laughed. I thought she was joking. I thought she was nervous and talking too much because of it. Caleb took his things to the room that had been his when he was a child. I had kept the bed, the desk, some of his school trophies. I thought he would be excited to see them, but the first thing Vanessa did was say that all that had to go, that they needed space for their clothes, for their things, and Caleb agreed. That same afternoon, they took out all the memories of my son's childhood and put them in the garage. The trophies, the photos, the drawings he had made in elementary school and that I had saved with such affection. Everything was replaced by Vanessa's clothes, her shoes, her creams, her perfumes, but I told myself it didn't matter. They were things, just things. The important thing was that my son was here, that he was safe, that I could help him. The first few weeks were tolerable. Vanessa complained about everything. The shower had low pressure. The mattress was too hard. The house was too cold in the mornings. But Caleb was looking for work. He went out with his resume. He made calls. I cooked for them. I washed their clothes. I cleaned their spaces. It was the least I could do. Then the weeks turned into a month, then into 2, then into 3, and something started to change. Caleb stopped looking for work with such intensity. He got up late. He spent hours in front of the television. When I asked him how the search was going, he answered with evasions. Soon. Mom, I'm waiting for some calls. The market is tough. Vanessa, for her part, started acting as if this were her house. She moved the furniture without asking me. She threw away things that were mine, saying they were old or broken. She invited her friends without telling me. She used my kitchen, my pots, my plates, and left them dirty in the sink, expecting me to wash them. And I did. I always did, because I kept believing it was temporary, that soon they would leave, that things would return to normal. But 6 months passed, then 9, then a year, and they were still here, installed, comfortable, as if I were the guest and they were the owners. Vanessa started making comments about my clothes, about my way of cooking, about how I decorated my house. She said everything was outdated, that I needed to update myself, that I should let her help me have better taste. Caleb said nothing. He just looked the other way, as if he didn't want to get involved, as if it wasn't his problem. I started to feel strange in my own house, as if I had to ask permission to use my own living room, as if I were bothering them when I went into the kitchen and they were there, as if my presence were uncomfortable. But I kept quiet. I kept enduring, because he was my son, because I loved my son, because a mother always forgives, always understands, always hopes things will improve. 6 months ago, Vanessa announced she wanted to redecorate the living room. She said the sofa was horrible, that the curtains were depressing, that the paintings were in bad taste. Caleb agreed, and without asking me, without consulting me, they started changing everything. The sofa I bought with Robert was replaced by a new one that I didn't like. The curtains that I had sewn myself were thrown in the trash. The paintings I had chosen with such care were taken down and stored in the garage, along with the memories of Caleb's childhood. My living room ceased to be mine, and when I protested, when I finally gathered the courage to say I didn't like the changes, Vanessa looked at me with pity and told me, "Oh, Eleanor, you have to learn to let go of the past. This is modern. This is what's in style now." And Caleb, my son, the boy I raised, cared for, loved with every fiber of my being, only said, "Mom, Vanessa is right. The house needed a change." That night I cried alone in my room, It was the only room I still felt was mine, the only space where I could close the door and breathe. But even that was about to change for me. Because now, standing in front of the delivery men, with that refrigerator I had bought with so much effort, I had just realized something. If I didn't put a stop to this now, if I didn't recover my voice now, I was going to lose everything. I was going to become a stranger in my own life. I was going to disappear inside my own house. And that was not going to happen. No more. The delivery men were still there, waiting. The youngest one looked at me with something resembling compassion. The older one just wanted to finish his job and leave. I didn't blame them. This wasn't their problem. They had just come to deliver a refrigerator, not to witness the crumbling of a family. Caleb took a step toward me. He had that expression on his face, the one he had perfected over the last 2 years. The expression of someone about to explain something simple to someone who doesn't understand. As if I were a child. As if I were stupid. "Mom," he said in a calm, almost condescending voice, "don't make this more difficult than it has to be. Vanessa and I already talked about it. The fridge goes better in our room, we have more space there, and that is my room." I interrupted him. My voice remained calm, but every word came out clear, precise. That room was mine for 30 years. I slept there with your father. I cried there when he died. That room is not yours. It never was. Vanessa let out an exaggerated sigh, as if she were dealing with a difficult old woman who wouldn't listen to reason. "Eleanor, please, you don't live in the past anymore. That room is ours now. You have the back room, which is perfectly comfortable. I don't understand why you always have to be so." "Because this is my house," I said, cutting her off. "And that refrigerator you see there, the one you want to take as if it were yours, I paid for it, with my money, with 8 months of savings." I turned to the delivery men. "Gentlemen, that refrigerator goes in the kitchen. Please follow me." And without waiting for an answer, I turned around and walked toward the kitchen. My steps were firm, despite the trembling I felt in my legs. I could feel Caleb's gaze nailed to my back. I could hear the furious tapping of Vanessa's heels against the floor. The delivery men looked at each other. Then they looked at Caleb. And finally, to my infinite relief, they followed me. The kitchen was small but functional. The old refrigerator was in the corner, next to the sink. It had been white once, but now it was more of a yellowish shade. The freezer door didn't close well, and I had to keep it shut with duct tape. The motor made a horrible noise every night, a constant buzz that had accompanied me for 15 years. But that refrigerator had been mine. I had chosen it. I had paid for it. And now I was going to replace it with something new, something that would also be mine. "Here," I said, pointing to the space. "You can take out the old one and put the new one right there." The older delivery man nodded and started unplugging the old refrigerator. The young one began unwrapping the new one, removing the protective plastic with care. It was beautiful. White, shiny, new. It smelled like a factory, like fresh possibilities, like a new beginning. Caleb appeared in the kitchen doorway. His face had changed. There was no longer condescension. Now, there was something akin to disbelief, as if he couldn't believe I was contradicting him, as if he couldn't process that his mother, the quiet and resigned woman of the last 2 years, had found her voice. "Mom, this is ridiculous," he said. "You're making a scene over nothing." "It's not over nothing," I answered, without looking at him. I kept watching the delivery men move the old refrigerator to one side. "It's over everything. For every time you ignored me. For every decision you made without consulting me. For every time you made me feel like a stranger in my own house." Vanessa appeared behind Caleb. She had her arms crossed and her jaw clenched. Her eyes shone with contained fury. "You know what? Eleanor, do whatever you want with your stupid refrigerator. Anyway, you've always been selfish. You never think about anyone but yourself." Those words hit me like a punch. Not because of the insult, but because of the absolute injustice of that statement. Me, who had opened my house when they had nowhere to go. Me, who cooked for them every day. Me, who washed their clothes, cleaned their spaces, gave them everything I had. I was the selfish one. I turned slowly to look at her. And this time, I didn't smile. This time I let her see exactly what I felt. The pain, the disappointment, The silent rage I had been accumulating for 2 years. Selfish, I repeated. The word came out like a whisper, but heavy with weight. I am selfish because I want the refrigerator I paid for with my money to go in my kitchen. I am selfish because after 2 years of letting you live here for free, feeding you, taking care of you as if you were children, I finally decided I deserved to have a voice in my own home. Vanessa opened her mouth to answer, but I raised a hand. No, I'm done listening to you. I've spent 2 years listening to you criticize my house, my clothes, my way of living. I've spent 2 years being patient, being understanding, waiting for you to someday remember that this is my house and you are my guests. Guests, Vanessa scoffed. How funny you are. It is the truth, I said, looking her straight in the eye. You don't pay rent? You don't pay utilities? You don't buy food? I pay for everything. With my pension. With my savings. With the money I earned working for 40 years. Caleb shifted uncomfortably in his spot. He knew every word I said was true, and for the first time in a long time, he seemed ashamed. The older delivery man cleared his throat. Ma'am, it's ready. The new refrigerator is plugged in and working. I looked toward the corner of the kitchen. There it was. White, shiny, perfect. Mine. Thank you, I said with a genuine smile. Thank you very much. The 2 men gathered their tools and the packaging plastic. They passed by Caleb and Vanessa, who remained standing in the doorway like pillars of salt. I heard them say goodbye, heard the front door close as they left. And then it was just the 3 of us. In that small kitchen that suddenly seemed immense. In that heavy silence that was full of things unsaid, of accumulated resentments, of truths that had finally come to light. Vanessa was the first to move. She spun on her heels and left the kitchen with furious steps. I heard the bedroom door slam, then the sound of drawers being opened and closed violently. Caleb stayed there, looking at me. There was something in his eyes I hadn't seen in a long time. Confusion, insecurity, maybe even a glimmer of guilt. Mom, he started. His voice sounded different, smaller, younger, like that of the boy who used to run to me after school to tell me about his day. But I didn't let him finish. Caleb, I said softly, for 2 years I have given you everything I have. My house, my food, my patience, my love, and in all that time, you have never asked me how I am. You have never thanked me. You have never treated me like your mother. You have treated me as if I were an old piece of furniture that is there only because you haven't found where to throw it away. That's not true, he protested weakly. No? Then why did you just tell 2 strangers that your wife is the one in charge here? Why do you never defend me when Vanessa criticizes me? Why do you allow her to change my entire house without even asking if I agree? Caleb looked down. I didn't realize, he murmured. Yes, you realized, I answered. It was just easier for you to ignore it. Easier to let her do whatever she wanted. Easier to stay quiet than to defend your own mother. The words hung in the air between us. And in that moment, standing in front of my son in the kitchen of my house, next to the new refrigerator I had bought with so much effort, I realized something important. This was just the beginning. If I wanted to reclaim my life, my space, my dignity, I was going to have to keep fighting. And for the first time in 2 years, I was ready to do it. It had all started so gradually that I almost didn't notice how I lost control. When Caleb and Vanessa arrived 2 years ago, I was excited. I had spent so much time alone in this big, silent house, so much time eating at the kitchen table, with no one to share a conversation with, so much time watching television in the empty living room, surrounded by memories of a life that no longer existed. I thought it would be good to have company. I thought it would be nice to hear voices in the house again. Laughter, music, life. How wrong I was. The first few days were normal. Caleb and Vanessa settled into their room. They ate with me. Vanessa even helped me wash the dishes a couple of times. She told me stories about her job at a clothing store, about her friends, about the places she had visited. Caleb looked for work with enthusiasm. He left early with his suit and his portfolio full of resumes. I cooked his favorite dishes. I made coffee the way Caleb liked it. I bought the cookies Vanessa mentioned she loved. I wanted them to feel welcome. I wanted to be a good mother-in-law. But after the first week, something changed. Vanessa stopped helping in the kitchen. She said she was tired, that she had worked all day, that she needed to rest. I understood. We all get tired. So I washed the dishes alone while they watched TV in the living room. Then Vanessa quit working. She said her boss was horrible, that the customers were rude, that the pay wasn't worth it. Caleb agreed. He said she didn't have to put up with that kind of mistreatment, that she could take some time to find something better. So now, both of them were home all day. And I kept going to my job at the school, coming back tired in the afternoons, and finding them on the couch watching TV shows surrounded by dirty plates and empty glasses. At first, I picked it all up without saying anything. I thought they were going through a tough time, that they needed support, that it was my duty as a mother to help my son when he needed me most. But weeks passed and nothing changed. Caleb still hadn't found a job. Vanessa still hadn't looked for a new one. And I kept working, cleaning, cooking, paying all the bills. One day I came home and found 3 of Vanessa's friends in my living room. They were drinking wine, eating snacks I had bought for the week, laughing out loud. The music was so loud it could be heard from the street. My neighbors, Mrs. Higgins and her husband Mr. Higgins, looked at me with pity when I passed in front of their house. That night, when the friends left leaving the living room a mess, I gathered the courage to talk to Vanessa. "Honey," I told her in the softest voice I could manage, "next time you want to invite your friends over, could you let me know? Just so I know they're coming." Vanessa looked at me as if I had asked for something absurd. "Why would I have to let you know? This is my house too now, isn't it?" "Yes, but then I don't see what the problem is. My friends can come whenever I want." And she went to her room, leaving me standing in the middle of the living room, surrounded by empty bottles and plates with leftover food. That was the first sign, but I ignored it. Then came the criticisms. Small at first, almost like casual comments. "Eleanor, why do you wear those old-fashioned clothes? You should update your wardrobe." "Eleanor, this soup is too salty. Don't you know how to cook better?" "Eleanor, that painting on the wall is horrible. It looks like it's from the 72nds. Every comment was a little prick. But I told myself Vanessa was just trying to help, that maybe she was right, that maybe I was a little outdated. So I started changing things. I bought new clothes that didn't fit me well but were more modern. I cooked different dishes that I didn't enjoy but that Vanessa approved of. I took down some of my favorite paintings and stored them in the garage. And the more I gave, the more she took. She started rearranging my kitchen without asking me. She moved the pots, the plates, the utensils. I would come home and couldn't find anything. When I asked her where she had put things, she sighed as if I were a burden. "Eleanor, it's all more organized now. You just have to get used to it." Then she started with the furniture. The sofa was in the wrong place. The table was too big. The curtains were ugly. Little by little, my living room stopped looking like the living room where I had lived for decades. It turned into something strange, something I didn't recognize, something I didn't feel was mine. And Caleb said nothing. He never said anything. When I tried to talk to him, when I asked him if he could ask Vanessa to consult me before changing things, he just shrugged. "Mom, don't cause drama. It's just furniture. Vanessa has good taste. Let her do what she wants. In my house, with my things, with my life." Months passed and things got worse. Vanessa started going into my bedroom when I wasn't there. She said she was looking for something, that she needed a charger or a towel or whatever excuse she could come up with. But I knew she was just snooping, going through my drawers, looking at my things. One day, I came back from work and found she had thrown several of my blouses in the trash. When I asked her why, she told me they were old and torn, that she was doing me a favor. But those blouses weren't torn. They were old, yes, but they were in perfect condition. And they were mine. She had no right to throw them away. That night I cried in my room. I cried for my blouses. I cried for my house that I no longer felt was mine. I cried for my son, who had stopped seeing me as his mother and saw me as an obstacle. But the next morning, I got up, dried my tears, and I kept going. Because that was what I had always done. Keep going, endure, survive. The breaking point came 6 months ago. I had been saving to buy a new refrigerator. The old one didn't work anymore. The freezer door didn't close. The motor made a noise that kept me awake at night. I needed a new one urgently. I kept the money in a cookie tin on the highest shelf of my closet. $20 here, $30 there. Everything I could set aside from my pension after paying the bills. The food, the utilities. It was a slow and painful process, but I was determined. One afternoon I came home and the tin was in a different place. I was sure. I always put it behind a box of old shoes. Now it was in front, visible. I opened it with trembling hands. $100 was missing. $100 that had taken me weeks to save. $100 that I needed for my refrigerator. I went straight to Caleb and Vanessa's room. I knocked on the door. Vanessa opened it, wearing a silk robe I had never seen on her. New, expensive. "Money is missing from my tin," I said, trying to keep my voice calm. Vanessa blinked innocently. "What tin?" "The tin where I keep my savings. In my closet." "Oh, that one. Yeah, I borrowed a few dollars. I needed to buy some things. I need you to return them to me," I said. "I'm saving for something important." Vanessa laughed, a light, carefree laugh. "Oh, Eleanor, relax. I'll pay you back when I can. It's not a big deal." And she closed the door in my face. I stood there, trembling with rage and helplessness. She had entered my room. She had opened my closet. She had taken my money. And she didn't feel a shred of remorse. That night I told Caleb what had happened. I expected him to get angry. I expected him to defend his mother. But he just said, "Mom, it's $100. It's not the end of the world. Vanessa will pay you back." She never did. Those $100 never returned. And I had to save for 2 more months to recover what I had lost. But finally, I made it. Finally, I gathered the $1,200 I needed. And I ordered my new refrigerator without telling anyone. Because I knew if I mentioned it, they would find a way to take it from me, to make it theirs, to steal even that from me. And I was right. Because when the refrigerator arrived this morning, the first thing Caleb did was order them to take it to Vanessa. As if I didn't exist. As if my money didn't matter. As if my voice was worth nothing. But today, finally, I had said enough. Today I had recovered my voice. And I didn't plan on losing it again. After the incident with the refrigerator, the tension in the house became unbearable. Vanessa barely spoke to me. When she had to talk to me, she did it with that cutting and cold tone that made every sentence sound like an insult. Caleb avoided looking me in the eye. He moved through the house like a ghost, escaping to his room every time I entered a room. But I didn't yield. The refrigerator stayed in my kitchen, and every time I saw it there, shiny and new, I felt a small spark of satisfaction. It was a small victory, insignificant to some, but for me, it meant everything. It meant I still existed, that I still had a voice. However, things got worse quickly. 3 days after the incident, I came home from work and found the living room completely reorganized, again. But this time was different. This time, they hadn't just moved the furniture. They had removed everything that was mine and replaced it with new things. The beige sofa I had bought 5 years ago was gone. In its place was a dark gray, angular, modern, uncomfortable one. The curtains I had chosen with such care had been replaced by shiny fabric ones with a pattern that hurt to look at. And worst of all, my wedding portrait that had been stored in the garage for months still hadn't returned to its place. In its place was a giant mirror with a silver frame reflecting the entire transformed room. I stood in the entryway, with my purse still hanging from my shoulder, looking at what had once been my space, my sanctuary, my home. Vanessa came out of the kitchen with a cup of coffee in her hand. She was wearing one of my robes, the pink one that had been a gift from Robert years ago. She hadn't even bothered to ask for permission to use it. "What do you think?" she asked with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Much better, right? This living room was so outdated. Now it looks like it belongs in this century." "You didn't ask me," I said. My voice came out weaker than I would have liked. "I didn't need to ask you," she replied, taking a sip of her coffee. "Caleb and I live here too. We have a right for the house to look good. And my sofa? Where is my sofa? We donated it. It was horrible, Eleanor. It was time to throw it out." I didn't want to throw it out. Well, I did. And Caleb agreed. Of course Caleb agreed. Caleb always agreed with her. Caleb had stopped being my son and had become her puppet. And who paid for all this? I asked, looking at the new furniture. Where did you get the money? Vanessa shrugged. We used your credit card. We found it in your purse the other day. You don't mind, right? After all, you live here with us. It's fair that you contribute to making the house look better. I felt the blood drain from my face. They had taken my card. They had spent my money, without asking, without permission, as if everything that was mine was also theirs. Give me back my card, I said, extending my hand. It's in the bedroom. I'll give it to you later. No. Now. Something in my voice made Vanessa stop smiling. She looked at me with those narrowed eyes, evaluating me, calculating how far she could push me. Fine, she said finally. You don't have to get dramatic. She went to the bedroom and came back with my card. She handed it to me as if she were doing me a favor. I took it and put it in my purse, promising myself that from that moment on, I would carry it with me everywhere. That night I checked my bank statement online. They had spent $850. $850 on furniture I hadn't chosen, that I didn't like, that I didn't want. $850 that had left my account without my authorization. When I confronted Caleb the next day, he simply said, Mom, it was necessary. The house looked terrible. You should be grateful that Vanessa took the time to fix it up. Grateful. I should be grateful that they had stolen my money and destroyed my space. The following weeks were a slow and constant nightmare. Every day brought a new humiliation, a new invasion, a new way of making me feel like I didn't belong in my own life. Vanessa started inviting her friends more frequently. They arrived in the afternoons and stayed until night, drinking wine, laughing loudly, leaving the house a mess. I came back from work tired and found them in my living room, using my plates, my glasses, sitting on the furniture she had bought with my money. One of her friends, a woman named Lillian with bleached blonde hair and long red nails, looked at me one day and said, Oh, your mom is so cute, Vanessa. Does she live with you? Vanessa laughed. Yes, she lives with us. She's elderly, you know. She needs someone to take care of her. I froze in the kitchen entrance. She lives with us. As if this were her house and I were the guest. As if she were doing me the favor of letting me stay. I didn't correct the statement. I didn't say anything. I just went to my room and closed the door, trying to block out the sound of their laughter. Then they started with the food. I had always done the grocery shopping. I bought what we liked, what we needed, what fit my budget. But Vanessa started complaining about everything. This is too greasy. This has too much salt. This is too cheap. Why don't you buy better quality stuff? Because this is what I can afford. I told her one day after hearing the umpteenth complaint. Well, you should try harder, she replied. Caleb and I deserve to eat well. Caleb and her. Always Caleb and her. Never me. As if my needs didn't matter. As if my effort wasn't enough. I started hiding food in my room. Crackers, fruit, cans of tuna. Small things I could eat when I didn't want to face them in the kitchen. Things I knew were mine and no one else would touch. But they even took that from me. One day I came home and found Vanessa coming out of my room with a bag of cookies in her hand. My cookies. The ones I had bought and hidden in my drawer. These were in your room, she asked, chewing on one. Why do you keep food in there? How weird. I didn't answer. I just snatched the bag from her hands and went back to my room. I heard her laughing as I closed the door. The invasions of my privacy became constant. I found my drawers open. My clothes moved around. My personal items in places where I hadn't left them. Vanessa rummaged through my belongings as if she had all the right in the world. One day, a necklace that had belonged to my mother disappeared. A silver necklace with a small heart-shaped pendant. It wasn't valuable in monetary terms, but to me, it was everything. It was the only thing I had left of her. I searched for it everywhere. In my room, in the bathroom, in the living room. Nothing. 3 days later, I saw Vanessa wearing it. She was in the kitchen, making herself a coffee, and the necklace shone on her neck as if it belonged to her. That is my necklace, I said. My mother's necklace. Vanessa touched her neck with feigned surprise. This one? I found it in your room. I thought you didn't want it anymore. It looks better on me anyway. I want you to give it back. Oh, Eleanor, don't be selfish. It's just a necklace. Besides, I've already grown fond of it. And she walked away, leaving me standing there, trembling with impotent rage. That night I told Caleb what had happened. I told him Vanessa had taken my mother's necklace without permission, that she was using it as if it were hers. "And what do you want me to do, Mom?" he asked without looking up from his phone. "I want you to tell her to give it back. It's my mother's. It's important to me. It's just a necklace. Don't cause drama. Just a necklace." As if memories didn't matter. As if the pain wasn't real. I never got that necklace back. Vanessa kept wearing it for weeks, rubbing it in my face every time she passed near me. And Caleb never said anything. He never defended me. He never acknowledged that what was happening was wrong. I was becoming a prisoner in my own home. Every day, I lost a piece more of myself, of my space, of my dignity, of my history, and the worst was that I didn't know how to stop it. Every time I tried to set a boundary, I was met with a wall of indifference and cruelty. But something was changing inside me, slowly, silently, like a crack getting bigger until finally everything breaks. And that break was very close. The straw that broke the camel's back came one Tuesday afternoon. It was cold outside, one of those gray November days where the sky seems to press against the earth. I had left work early because I had a doctor's appointment. Nothing serious, just a routine checkup. My knees had been bothering me more than usual, and the doctor wanted to make sure it wasn't arthritis. I arrived home around 3 in the afternoon. Usually, I didn't come back until 6, so they didn't expect to see me. I opened the front door silently, carrying the grocery bags I had bought on the way. I had found chicken on sale and thought about making the soup Caleb liked when he was a boy. Despite everything, despite the pain and constant humiliation, I was still his mother. I still wanted to see him smile. How foolish I was. I left the bags in the entryway and walked toward the kitchen, but I stopped dead when I heard voices coming from my room. From my room, the door was ajar. Vanessa's voice sounded clear and decided, "No, Caleb, I've already decided. This room is perfect for us. It has more space, better light, and that closet is 3 times bigger than the one in the other room. I don't understand why we leave the best room to your mom." I heard Caleb sigh. "It's her room. Vanessa, she and my dad shared it for years. I don't know if—" "Oh, please. Your dad died over 10 years ago. It's time she got over that. Besides, she's one person. She doesn't need so much space. We are 2. It's logical that we have the bigger room." I felt as if someone had reached into my chest and was squeezing my heart. They wanted to take my room. The last thing I still felt was mine. The only space where I could close the door and breathe. The place where I had slept with Robert, where I had cared for him when he was sick, where I had mourned his death, where I kept every memory of our life together. "But Vanessa," Caleb said, sounding unconvinced, "I don't know if she's going to agree." "We're not asking for permission," Vanessa replied. "We're going to tell her. And if she doesn't like it, well, too bad. This house is as much ours as hers. We live here too." I peeked through the crack in the door. What I saw broke my soul. Vanessa was standing in the middle of my room with her hands on her hips, evaluating the space like a queen, inspecting her future palace. Caleb was sitting on the edge of my bed, the bed he had shared with his father, looking at the floor with that guilty expression I knew so well, but that never led him to do the right thing. "We can move her stuff to the back room this weekend," Vanessa continued. "It's smaller, but she doesn't need much. After all, at her age, what does she want so much space for? At my age." As if being 62 made me something less than human. As if I didn't deserve comfort, privacy, respect. "And look at this closet," Vanessa said, opening it. "It's full of old clothes she probably doesn't even wear. We can donate all that and put our things in." She started pulling out my blouses, my dresses, my sweaters. She threw them onto the bed without any care. She grabbed a box that was on the top shelf, the box where I kept the letters Robert had written me when we were dating, photos from our honeymoon, the most precious memories of my marriage. "And what is this?" she asked, opening the box. "I don't know," Caleb replied without even looking. "Probably old stuff." Vanessa started going through the contents. She took a photo of my wedding and looked at it with indifference. "Look how old-fashioned they used to dress. This dress looks like it's from another era." Something broke inside me. It wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It was silent and definitive, like the sound of a dry branch snapping under too much weight. I pushed the door open and entered the room. "What are you doing?" Both turned around, startled. Vanessa dropped the photo onto the bed. Caleb stood up quickly, his face red. "Mom, we didn't know you were here," he stammered. "Obviously," I replied. My voice came out surprisingly calm, considering that inside I felt like I was crumbling. "Now answer me. What are you doing in my room?" Vanessa recovered her composure quickly. She raised her chin with that air of superiority I knew so well. "We were looking at the space. Caleb and I decided this room is better for us." "This room is mine," I said. "It was yours," Vanessa corrected. "But things change. There are more people in this house now. We need to reorganize." What a pretty word to say. They wanted to displace me, erase me, turn me into nothing. I looked at Caleb. "You agree with this?" He couldn't hold my gaze. "Mom, it's just that the room we're in now is very small. This one has more space. It would be more comfortable for us." "For us," I repeated. "Always for us. Never mind what I feel. Never mind what I need." "Don't be dramatic," Vanessa said. "We're leaving you the other room. It's not like we're kicking you out on the street." I walked over to the bed and picked up the box with my memories. I hugged it against my chest as if it were the only thing keeping me standing. This was my room for 30 years. Here I slept with my husband. Here I cared for him when he was dying. Here I mourned his death. Every corner of this place holds his presence, his memories, our history. "Exactly," Vanessa said. "That's why you need to let it go. Living in the past isn't healthy. Eleanor, you need to move on. Move on." She was telling me I needed to move on while she stole the only thing I had left of the life I had built. I looked at the clothes scattered on the bed. I looked at Vanessa standing in the middle of my room as if it were already hers. I looked at Caleb, incapable of defending me, incapable of remembering that I was his mother, that this was my house, that he owed me everything. And something inside me finally said enough. "Get out of my room," I said. Vanessa laughed. "Excuse me?" I said, "Get out of my room." "Now, Eleanor, you can't talk to us like that." "I can, and I am. This is my house, this is my room, and you have no right to be here deciding what to do with my things." Caleb took a step toward me. "Mom, calm down. We can talk about this." "There is nothing to talk about," I interrupted him. "You are not keeping my room. You are not moving my things. You are not touching anything that is mine." Vanessa crossed her arms. "And if we don't want to leave? What are you going to do? Kick us out?" The question hung in the air. We all knew it had reached that point, the point where I finally had to decide. Keep yielding until I disappeared completely, or plant my feet on the ground and fight for what was mine. I looked at my son, the boy I had raised alone after his father died, the boy I had given everything to: education, love, sacrifice, my entire life. And he looked back at me as if I were a stranger, as if I were an obstacle, as if I were nothing. In that moment I knew I had lost my son a long time ago, that the Caleb I knew, the sweet boy who brought me flowers from the garden and told me I was the best mom in the world, no longer existed. He had been replaced by this weak man who hid behind a cruel woman and allowed his own mother to be humiliated in her own home. And if I had lost him anyway, then I had nothing left to lose. "Get out of my room," I repeated. This time, my voice was steel. "And then we are going to have a very serious conversation about how things are going to be from now on." Vanessa opened her mouth to protest, but something in my expression stopped her. For the first time since she had arrived at my house 2 years ago, I saw a flash of uncertainty in her eyes. Caleb took Vanessa by the arm. "Let's go," he said quietly. "We'll talk later." They left the room. Vanessa shot me a look of pure hatred before crossing the doorway. Caleb didn't look at me at all. When they left, I locked the door, something I had never done before in my own house. I sat on the edge of the bed, still hugging the memory box, and let the tears finally fall. But these tears were different. They weren't of sadness or helplessness. They were of rage, of determination, of a crystalline clarity that had finally arrived after 2 years of fog. I wasn't going to yield anymore. I wasn't going to be invisible in my own life anymore. I wasn't going to allow them to treat me as if I didn't matter. This was my house, and it was time everyone remembered that. That night I didn't leave my room. I heard Vanessa and Caleb talking in hushed voices in the living room. I heard their footsteps coming and going. I heard their bedroom door slam shut. But I stayed where I was, sitting on my bed, hugging the memory box, thinking about everything I had lost in these 2 years, thinking about the woman I had been before and the one I had become, thinking about Robert and what he would say if he could see me now, allowing our son to treat me like this, and thinking about what I had to do. The next morning I got up early. I showered. I dressed with care, choosing one of my favorite dresses, one I had stopped wearing because Vanessa had said it was old-fashioned. I did my hair. I put on the earrings Robert had given me for our 10th anniversary. I looked in the mirror and saw the Eleanor I used to be. Strong, dignified, owner of her own life. I left my room at 7 a.m. Caleb and Vanessa were still sleeping. I went to the kitchen and made coffee. I poured myself a cup and sat at the table, waiting. Caleb came out first, around 9. He stopped when he saw me sitting there, still, hands around the coffee cup that had already gone cold. "Mom?" He started with a hesitant voice. "Sit down," I said. Something in my tone made him obey without protest. He sat across from me, nervous, avoiding my gaze. Vanessa appeared minutes later, yawning, with messy hair and my pink robe still on. When she saw me, she frowned. "What's going on?" she asked, with that irritated tone she used in the mornings. "Sit down," I repeated. "I'm not going to. Sit down, Vanessa." This time my voice left no room for discussion. Vanessa exchanged a look with Caleb and then sat down, crossing her arms with a defiant attitude. I looked at both of them. At my son, whom I no longer recognized, at the woman who had turned my life into hell, and I felt a strange calm take over me. The calm that comes when you finally make a decision from which there is no turning back. "I have something to tell you," I began, "and you are going to listen to me without interrupting. No excuses, no justifications." Caleb looked down. Vanessa rolled her eyes, but said nothing. "This house is mine. I bought it with my husband 37 years ago. Every payment we made, every improvement we added, every sacrifice we made to keep it was ours, not yours. Mine and Robert's. When he died, it remained completely in my name. It is paid off. There is no mortgage. There are no debts. It is mine." I paused, letting the words settle. 2 years ago, when you asked me to stay here for a few days, I opened my door because you are my son, Caleb. Because I love you. Because a mother always helps her children when they need it. I said yes because I thought it would be temporary. Because I believed you would find work soon and move to your own place. Caleb shifted uncomfortably in his chair. "But 2 years have passed. 2 years in which you haven't paid a single dollar of rent, nor utilities, nor food. I pay for everything. With my pension, with the savings I have left, with the money I earned working 40 years of my life." "Mom," Caleb started. "I haven't finished." I cut him off. "During these 2 years, I have watched my house stop being mine. How my furniture was replaced without my permission. How my things were moved, thrown away, donated without anyone asking me. How my space was invaded again and again. How I was treated like a stranger in the place where I have lived more than 30 years. I looked directly at Vanessa. "You took my money without permission. You used my credit card without authorization. You entered my room when I wasn't there. You threw away my clothes. You took my mother's necklace and never returned it. You invited your friends and told them I lived with you, as if this were your house and I were your dependent." Vanessa opened her mouth, but I raised a hand. "I'm not done yet. Yesterday you went into my room, to my room. The last thing I still felt was mine, and you decided you wanted it for yourselves. You decided that I, the owner of this house, should settle for the smallest room. You decided that my memories, my history, my life with Robert didn't matter." I felt the rage I had been containing for 2 years starting to boil in my chest, but I kept my voice calm. "And you, Caleb, you allowed all this. You never defended me. You never told your wife to stop. You never remembered that this is your mother's house, that I gave you everything, that I raised you alone after your father died, that I worked until exhaustion so you would have education, clothes, food, a roof over your head. Caleb had tears in his eyes now. Mom, I'm sorry, I didn't. Yes, you did, I said. You did it every time you stayed silent, every time you looked the other way, every time you chose her over me. The silence that followed was heavy, painful, loaded with truths that had finally been spoken out loud. I took a deep breath. So this is what is going to happen now. You have 30 days to find another place to live. 1 month. That is more than generous considering we never had a formal agreement, that you never paid rent, that basically you have been living here for free while constantly disrespecting me. What? Shouted Vanessa, standing up. You can't kick us out. Yes, I can. This is my house. And I'm done. Caleb stood up too. Mom, please. We have nowhere to go. We have no money saved. I still haven't found a job. Then you better start looking more seriously, I replied. Because in 30 days, if you are still here, I am going to start a legal eviction process. And believe me, I will do it. You are a selfish old woman, spat Vanessa. After everything we've done for you, everything you've done for me, I interrupted with a bitter laugh. What exactly have you done for me? Steal my money? Invade my privacy? Treat me like garbage in my own house? Is that what you've done for me? I stood up, looking her straight in the eye. Get out of my kitchen. Go pack. Go look for apartments. Go do whatever you have to do. But in 30 days, I want you out of my house. Caleb tried to approach me. Mom, we can talk about this. We can fix things. I promise that. No. Caleb, there is nothing left to fix. I have decided, and my decision is final. I turned around and walked toward my room. I heard Vanessa screaming behind me. I heard Caleb trying to calm her down. I heard objects being slammed, doors being closed violently. But I didn't stop. I entered my room, locked the door, and sat on my bed. My hands were trembling. My heart was beating hard. But for the first time in 2 years, I felt like I could breathe. I had recovered my voice. I had set my boundaries. I had chosen my dignity over maternal guilt. And although it hurt, although every fiber of my being as a mother wanted to yield and forgive and let them stay, I knew I had done the right thing, because if I didn't do it now, I was going to lose myself completely, and I had already lost too much. The following days were the hardest of my life. The house became a silent battlefield. Vanessa and Caleb barely spoke to me. When they had to address me, they did so in cold monosyllables, with looks full of resentment. But I held my ground. I didn't yield. I didn't apologize. I didn't back down. Caleb tried to convince me several times. He appeared at my door at night with red eyes, begging me to reconsider. He said he was sorry, that things were going to change, that Vanessa promised to behave better. But I knew they were empty words, promises that would be broken as soon as I yielded. Mom, please, he begged one night. We are your family. You can't kick us out like this. Precisely because you are my family, I expected you to treat me with respect, I replied. And you didn't. Vanessa took a different path. She went from open fury to silent manipulation. She started acting like a victim, sighing dramatically every time I entered a room, talking on the phone with her friends about how cruel her mother-in-law was, how unfair what she was doing was. I heard entire conversations where she painted a completely false story of what had happened. She is kicking us out on the street for no reason, she said, crying into the phone. After everything we did for her, after taking care of her all these years, this is how she pays us. Taking care of me. As if I were an invalid old woman who needed assistance. As if they had been my saviors and not my tormentors. But the worst were the sabotage attempts. Vanessa started hiding things. My keys disappeared and appeared in strange places. My favorite coffee ran out mysteriously. The milk I bought for the week spoiled because someone left the refrigerator open overnight. Petty little revenges designed to make my life impossible. One morning, I found that my bathroom mirror had been scratched with something sharp. Ugly words, insults I won't repeat. When I confronted Vanessa, she simply shrugged. I don't know what you're talking about. Maybe you're the one losing your mind. I called a locksmith and changed the lock on my room. I also put a padlock on the new refrigerator in the kitchen. If they were going to behave like spoiled children, I was going to protect what was mine. The neighbors started to notice. Mrs. Higgins, who lived in the house next door, stopped me one day when I was picking up the mail. Eleanor, is everything okay? I've heard a lot of shouting lately. I'm resolving a family problem, I replied with a tired smile. But it's almost over. She put her hand on mine. If you need anything at all, we are here. Mr. Higgins and I appreciate you very much. Don't let anyone make you feel bad in your own home. Her words gave me strength. They reminded me that there were good people in the world. People who saw me as a human being worthy of respect, not as a resource to exploit. 2 weeks passed, then 3. Caleb and Vanessa made no visible effort to look for another place. They remained in the house, bitter, resentful, but without moving. I started preparing the documents for the legal eviction. I consulted with a lawyer, an older man named Lawrence Davis, who had helped a friend of mine with a similar problem. You have every right to evict them, he assured me. It is your property. They have no lease agreement. You have been more than generous, giving them 30 days. When there were 5 days left until the deadline, something changed. I came home from the supermarket and found Caleb sitting alone in the living room. There was no music. There was no television. Just him, with his head in his hands. Where is Vanessa? I asked, leaving the bags in the kitchen. She left, he said, without looking up. What do you mean she left? She left. She said she wasn't going to stay in a house where she wasn't welcome. She said I had to choose between her and you. And when I couldn't, she left. I felt a strange mix of relief and sadness. Relief, because the main source of toxicity had left my house. Sadness, because my son was suffering. And despite everything, he was still my son. I sat on the sofa across from him. And what are you going to do? Caleb finally looked at me. His eyes were red, his cheeks stained with tears. I don't know, Mom. I don't know anything. I don't have a job. I don't have money. I don't have a wife. I have nothing. You have your mother, I said softly. You have always had me. But the way you treated me these 2 years, that cannot continue. If you stay, if you want to stay, things have to change completely. I know, he whispered. I know, and I am so sorry. I was so blind. I let her control me. I let her hurt you. I let our relationship be destroyed. Why? I asked. I needed to understand. I needed to know how my sweet boy had turned into this man who allowed so much abuse. Because I felt like a failure, he admitted. I lost my job. I couldn't support my wife. I couldn't pay my own rent. And when Vanessa started taking control of everything, it was easier to let her, because at least someone knew what to do. At least someone seemed to have a plan. But that plan destroyed me, I said. I know, and I will never be able to forgive myself for that. We sat in silence for a long time. The clock on the wall marked the seconds. Outside, I heard children playing in the street, their laughter a sharp contrast to the heaviness inside my house. You can stay, I said finally, but with conditions. You are going to look for a job seriously. You are going to contribute to the household expenses. You are going to respect my space and my decisions. And you are going to go to therapy, because you need help to understand why you let this go so far. Caleb nodded, wiping his tears with the back of his hand. I will do all that. I promise. I'm going to prove it to you. I don't want promises, Caleb. I want actions. I want real changes. You will have them. I swear by Dad's memory, you will have them. That night, Caleb started packing the things Vanessa had left behind. Clothes, shoes, beauty products. Everything was put into boxes and bags. The next day, she came to pick it all up. She didn't enter the house. She just waited outside while Caleb took the boxes to her car. I watched her from the living room window. She looked furious, defeated, but also relieved, as if she too were ready to close this chapter. When he finished loading everything, she got into the car without saying a word and left. There were no goodbyes. There were no apologies. She just left. And with her departure, I felt as if a huge weight had been lifted from my shoulders. The following days were strangely quiet. Caleb kept his word. He started looking for work with true dedication. He went out early with his updated resume. He made calls. He sent applications. And when he was home, he helped me. He washed the dishes. He cleaned the living room. He mowed the lawn in the garden that had been neglected for months. One night, while we were eating dinner together at the kitchen table, something simple we had stopped doing a long time ago, Caleb looked at me and said, "Thank you, Mom." Why? For not giving up on me, for giving me another chance, for being stronger than me. I smiled, a genuine smile I hadn't felt in a long time. I am your mother. I am always going to love you, but I also love myself. And that was the hardest lesson to learn. Caleb reached for my hand across the table and squeezed it gently. I understand now, and I promise I will never forget it again. And for the first time in 2 years, I believed him. 6 months passed since Vanessa left my house. 6 months that transformed my life in ways I never imagined possible. Caleb got a job 3 weeks after she left. It wasn't his dream job. It was an administrative position at a logistics company, but it was honest, stable, and paid decently. The first month he received his paycheck, he came home with an envelope full of bills. "Mom, this is for you. $300 for the bills and groceries." I looked at him surprised. "Caleb, you don't have to." "Yes, I have to," he interrupted. "I should have done it from the beginning. This is your house, and if I'm going to live here, I'm going to contribute. As it should be." I took the money with tears in my eyes. It wasn't about the $300. It was about what they represented. Respect, responsibility, the return of the son I had raised. Little by little, the house started feeling like mine again. Caleb and I worked together to restore its essence. We took the furniture Vanessa had discarded out of the garage. The beige sofa returned to the living room. The paintings I had chosen returned to the walls. My wedding portrait with Robert finally regained its place of honor above the fireplace. One afternoon, my niece Sarah came to visit me. I hadn't seen her for months. When Vanessa lived here, she had stopped coming because she felt uncomfortable with the constant tension. But now, sitting in my living room drinking coffee and eating the cookies I had baked that morning, I could see the joy on her face. "Aunt Eleanor, the house feels different. It feels like before, like a home." "Because now it is," I replied, smiling. "Now it is a home again." Sarah hugged me tight. "I'm so proud of you. I know it was hard, but you did the right thing. Not everyone has the courage to set boundaries, especially with family." Her words filled me with deep satisfaction. I had done the right thing, and although the path had been painful, it had been worth it. Caleb also started therapy as promised. He went twice a week to sessions with a psychologist named Dr. Angela Miller. At first, he didn't want to tell me what they talked about. But one day, during dinner, he shared something with me. "Dr. Miller says I have codependency issues, that I looked for in Vanessa what I should have looked for in myself. Strength, direction, purpose. And what do you think about that?" I asked. "That she's right. I lost myself trying to please someone who was never going to be satisfied, and in the process, I hurt the person who loved me most in this world." I didn't answer. I just reached for his hand and squeezed it. Some things didn't need words. With time, I started recovering parts of myself I had forgotten. I joined a reading group at the local library. I met other women my age, women who had lived lives full of ups and downs, of losses and victories. We met every Thursday afternoon to discuss books, but ended up talking about life, sharing stories, laughing at absurd things and crying over sad ones. One of them, a lady named Margaret Evans, became a close friend. She was also a widow. She had also gone through difficult situations with her adult children. She understood my pain in a way few people could. "What you did required a lot of courage," she told me one day while we were walking through the park near my house. "Many mothers would have stayed silent until they died. You chose to live." She was right. I had chosen to live. I had chosen my dignity over guilt. I had chosen to respect myself even when that meant disappointing my son. I renovated my room. I painted the walls a soft peach color that reminded me of summer sunsets. I bought new sheets, new curtains, and a beautiful comforter with embroidered flowers. Every time I entered my room now, I felt peace. I felt I was in my sanctuary, in my sacred space that no one would ever invade again. I also fixed up the garden. Robert had been the one who always took care of it, and after his death, I had neglected it. But now, with Caleb helping me on weekends, we pruned the bushes, planted new flowers, repaired the fence that was falling down. The garden bloomed again, and with it, so did I. One Saturday morning, while Caleb and I were working in the garden, a car stopped in front of my house. I recognized the vehicle immediately. It was Vanessa. She got out of the car, but didn't approach. She stayed, standing on the sidewalk, looking toward the house. Caleb stopped working and tensed up. "Do you want me to tell her to leave?" he asked. "No," I replied. "Let's see what she wants." Vanessa finally crossed the garden and stopped in front of us. She looked different, thinner, more tired. The arrogant shine she had always had in her eyes had gone out. "Eleanor," she said with a hesitant voice. "Caleb, I need to talk to you." Caleb crossed his arms, but said nothing. I put my shovel aside and waited. "I came to apologize," continued Vanessa. "I know what I did was wrong. Everything. The way I treated you, the way I acted as if this house were mine, the way I disrespected you, Eleanor." I looked into her eyes looking for sincerity. There was something there. Maybe genuine regret, but there was also something else. Need. Desperation. "What happened, Vanessa?" I asked. She looked down. "Everything fell apart after I left. I lost my job. I couldn't pay the rent on the apartment where I was staying. And Caleb, I miss him. I miss what we had." Caleb took a step forward. "What we had was toxic. Vanessa, you controlled everything. I wasn't myself with you. I was a pathetic version of me that did everything you wanted. But we can try again," she pleaded. "We can do it differently this time." "No," Caleb replied firmly. "I'm not going back. I've worked too hard on myself these months. I've rebuilt my relationship with my mom. I've found who I really am, and I'm not going to throw all that overboard." Vanessa turned to me, tears running down her cheeks. "Eleanor, please, could you talk to him? Could you convince him to give me another chance?" I looked at her for a long moment. This woman who had made my life hell, who had stolen my peace, my dignity, my home, who had treated me as if I were nothing, and I felt nothing. No rage, no pain, only a deep calm and absolute clarity. "Vanessa," I said softly, "I am not going to convince my son of anything. He is an adult and can make his own decisions. But what I will tell you is this. I learned that loving someone doesn't mean allowing them to disrespect you. I learned that being kind doesn't mean being weak. And I learned that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is say no." She sobbed. "But I love you, both of you." "Then prove it by respecting our decisions," Caleb replied. "Prove it by leaving us in peace. Prove it by working on yourself, like I am working on myself." Vanessa stood there for a moment longer. Then she turned around and walked back to her car. We watched her go in silence. When the car turned the corner and disappeared, Caleb sighed. "I did the right thing." "Mom?" "You did," I replied, putting my hand on his shoulder. "I am very proud of you." That night, while I was preparing dinner in my kitchen, with my new refrigerator working perfectly, with my son helping me chop vegetables, with soft music playing on the radio, I looked around and realized something. I was happy, genuinely happy. My house was mine again. My life was mine again. My peace was mine again. I had lost 2 years in the dark, allowing them to make me invisible, allowing them to steal pieces of my soul. But I had recovered them, one by one, with every boundary I set, with every time I said no, with every moment I chose my dignity over guilt. I looked at myself in the reflection of the kitchen window. I was 62 years old, gray in my hair, wrinkles around my eyes, hands marked by years of work, but I also had something I had lost and recovered. I had my voice, I had my strength, I had my freedom, and no one, ever again, was going to take them from me. Caleb put a plate on the table and smiled at me. "Dinner is ready, Mom." "Thank you, sweetheart," I replied. We sat together, mother and son, in the house that was mine, in the life I had reclaimed, in the peace I had fought to get, and for the first time in a long time, the future didn't scare me, because I knew that no matter what came, I was going to be okay, because I had finally learned the most important lesson of all. Loving myself wasn't selfishness, it was survival, it was dignity, it was life.